Bro, stop what you are doing right now. Because something just happened with Diddy's case that nobody is talking about the way they should be. His release date just changed. Again. And no cap, this is the third time in a matter of weeks that the number has shifted, and the Bureau of Prisons is not saying a single word about why. Not one statement, not one explanation, just a new date quietly sitting on a government website like it's nothing. Now you might be thinking, okay, it's just a date change, what's the big deal? And I need you to stay with me for a second, because the big deal is not just the 10 days. The big deal is what those 10 days point to when you zoom out and look at everything happening around this case right now. There is a legal fight in motion. There are appeal hearings that just wrapped up. There is a drug rehab program inside the prison that keeps shaving time off his sentence. And there is a pattern here that nobody is connecting the dots on. So by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly where Diddy's case stands right now and why the next few months might be more important than the next 2 years. Let's get into it. Alright, so let's back up for anyone who needs a quick refresh, because we need to lay the foundation before we get to the wild part. Back in September 2024, Diddy was arrested at a hotel in New York following a federal grand jury indictment. And this was not some minor situation. He was looking at 5 felony charges: racketeering conspiracy, sex trafficking, transportation to engage in prostitution, the full thing. If he had been convicted on everything, we are talking about life in prison. The man who built Bad Boy Records, who had a net worth once estimated in the hundreds of millions, who threw parties that the whole world talked about, was looking at spending the rest of his life in a cell. Then came the trial. 8 weeks long, a 29-day federal case that had the internet locked in. And here is where the story gets more complicated than most people remember it, because when the jury came back after 3 days of deliberations, it was not the clean guilty verdict a lot of people expected. The jury acquitted Diddy on the 3 most serious charges, including sex trafficking and racketeering conspiracy. Those were the ones that could have put him away forever. What they did find him guilty of were 2 violations of the Mann Act, which is a federal law that makes it illegal to transport someone across state lines for the purpose of prostitution. Guilty on those 2 counts, not guilty on the rest. Now in the courtroom, when that verdict was read out, Diddy got on his knees and put his head down in his chair. His family stood up and started clapping. His attorneys were hugging each other. And look, I get it. Relative to what he was facing, the acquittal on the biggest charges felt like a win in that moment. But here is the reality check. He was still convicted, still going to prison, and the real reckoning was still coming. October 3rd, 2025, sentencing day. And before we even get to the number, let's talk about what Diddy said in that courtroom, because bro, this moment hit different. He stood up and spoke on the record for the first time, and he said his actions were disgusting, shameful, and sick. He said he was sick from the drugs, out of control, and that he needed help he never got. He said he lost his self-respect, that he had been humbled and broken to his core. He said, "I hate myself right now. I've been stripped down to nothing. I am truly sorry for it all, no matter what they say." Now, whether you believe that apology is genuine or whether you think it was carefully written by a legal team trying to get a lighter sentence, that is your call to make. But you cannot deny that watching someone who once had that level of power and influence say those words in open court is one of the most remarkable things to happen in celebrity legal history. So what did the judge give him? Prosecutors wanted 11 years and 3 months. The defense was arguing for 14 months or less, which would have basically amounted to time served given he had already spent a year in the Metropolitan Detention Center before sentencing. The judge, Arun Subramanian, landed at 50 months, just over 4 years, plus a $500,000 fine and 5 years of supervised release. He explained that the prosecution's ask was more than necessary, but the defense's ask would not be sufficient. So everybody walked out of that courtroom a little bit unhappy. Classic. Now here is where the release date situation starts. With the year he had already served pre-sentencing factored in, Diddy was initially looking at being out by around June 4th, 2028. Then earlier this year, that date moved up to April 25th, 2028. And now, as of the Bureau of Prisons' own website, his release date is sitting at April 15th, 2028, 10 days earlier, again. Here's the thing though, 10 days sounds small, And technically, it is. But the reason it matters is because of what is quietly happening inside Fort Dix Federal Correctional Institution in New Jersey, where Diddy is currently serving his time. Because Diddy has been accepted into a drug abuse rehabilitation program inside the prison. And this is not just a wellness class, bro. Completing a program like this earns inmates significant sentence reductions through what are called good behavior credits under the First Step Act. So every time you see that release date creep forward, you need to ask yourself, is it the rehab program doing its work, or is something else in motion? Because here's the thing nobody is saying out loud. The date has now moved 3 times. It started at May 8th, 2028, then June 4th, then April 25th, now April 15th. And nobody, not his legal team, not the Bureau of Prisons, not any official source, has given a public explanation for why it keeps shifting. That level of silence around a case this high profile is not normal. And silence in a story this big is never just silence.
Secret Service Sam here for LA Magazine, and here is a hot diddler update. I know it's been a while, everybody, but Sean Diddy Puff Daddy Combs Leb is now set to get an early release from prison. April 15th, 2028. It was late April, but now they have moved it up 10 days. Why? His completion of the Residential Drug Abuse Program, or REDAP, Redap is what they call it. Because he has shown good behavior, they have taken 10 days off of his sentence. I predict that will keep going down. And I also predict, take that, when the diddler is released, he will do a sold-out concert at Madison Square Gardens. I mean, look, if Kanye can sell out and not get canceled, what do you think the diddler will do? He will come back and hit us up with all of his hits that nobody's heard in years. Harlem, shake it out. What do you think, guys? Let me know in the comments. Do you think Diddy should get out early or serve more time? Secret Service Sam out, Samson for president of the world.
Okay, wait for it, because here is where it gets crazy. While all of this is happening quietly inside the prison walls, Diddy's legal team has been going to absolute war on the outside. In December 2025, his lawyers formally appealed both the conviction and the sentence, arguing that the sexual encounters at the center of the case were consensual and that the punishment was excessive. Prosecutors fired back hard in February, urging the appellate court to uphold everything and describing Diddy as a repeat offender who used violence and threats to carry out his crimes. Then, in March 2026, the language from Diddy's legal team escalated to a level that made headlines everywhere. On March 13th, his attorneys filed an appeal calling his sentence a perversion of justice. They demanded immediate release, a full acquittal, or at minimum, a completely new sentencing hearing. A perversion of justice. That is not the language of a team that has quietly accepted the outcome. That is a team going to war. And the core legal argument is actually really interesting when you break it down. The defense is saying that the judge enhanced Diddy's sentence based on findings of coercion and violence. But here is a problem with that. The jury acquitted Diddy on every single charge that involved coercion and violence. So how can a judge use coercion as a reason to give a heavier sentence when the jury specifically said there was not enough evidence to convict on that? That is the constitutional question sitting at the center of this appeal, and it goes way beyond just Diddy. It touches something much bigger about how the justice system handles the line between what a jury decides and what a judge can factor into a sentence. Oral arguments in front of the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit just wrapped up. No cap, this is the hearing the whole legal saga has been building toward. And the judges made it clear they are not rushing their decision. They said they would be reserving their ruling for later, which means any day now, a decision could drop that either solidifies this conviction for good or cracks it open entirely and sends the case back down for resentencing. So here's where we actually are right now. Diddy is at a low-security federal facility in New Jersey, 40 miles outside Philadelphia. He is enrolled in a drug rehab program that keeps bringing his release date forward. His legal team just finished presenting oral arguments in an appeal that could result in a significantly lighter sentence or a brand new sentencing hearing. And his official release date has now moved 3 times with zero explanation from anyone in an official capacity. The realistic outcome here is probably not immediate release. Appeals courts do not typically just let someone walk out. What is more likely, if the appeal goes his way, is a remand for resentencing, which means the case goes back to the lower court and the judge has to reconsider the sentence without factoring in the coercion findings the jury rejected. And if that happens, you can expect that April 2028 date to start moving forward a lot faster. This story started with one woman, Cassie Ventura, filing a civil complaint in November 2023. One filing, and it became a federal trial, a conviction, a sentencing, an appeal, and now a constitutional question sitting in front of one of the most powerful courts in the country. No cap, this thing is nowhere near over. Drop a comment below and tell me what you actually think happens next. Does the appeal change anything? Does the date keep moving up? And if you want to stay up to date every time something breaks on this story, subscribe right now because we are going to be covering every update as it happens.